All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
It's story and small screens.
In a world where shadows dance and dreams take flight through the veil of reality into the night, Rob McConnell leads the way, a beacon so bright. With over 35 years, he ignites the light. A voice from the north where whispers are bold, stories untold in the echoes of old. Fact meets fiction in this realm of delight, in the X Zone where dark turns to bright. Welcome to the X Zone, believe and be free. A sanctuary for truth that dare to be seen, where the line between realms gently blurs. In a symphony of voices the mind stirs, with Rob McConnell stories.
And welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And we're coming to you tonight on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, Tuber, and we're being streamed by our good friends at Classic 1220 CFAJ AM right here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. My guest this hour is Eric Haase, and in a world driven by consumption, convenience, and profit, how do we stay connected to conscience, to the choices that shape not just our lives, but the planet itself? Our guest, Eric Haase, founder of ConsciousConsumer.net, believes awareness is the new currency, and that every purchase is a vote for the kind of world we want to live in. From sustainable living to ethical business, Eric's mission is to challenge us to rethink what it means to be living responsibly and to rediscover the power of intention behind every choice we make. Join us as we explore the evolution of consciousness, commerce, and compassion here on the X Zone. And welcome my guest, please, everyone, Eric Haase. And Eric, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us again, my friend.
Great to be here, Rob.
For the listeners who didn't have the opportunity before of meeting you here on the X Zone, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a long-time searcher of consciousness. I was originally going to school to be a psychiatrist, but discovered I didn't want to be a drug pusher, a legalized drug pusher, but I didn't want to know about the nature of consciousness. I switched to studying psychology and philosophy, graduated with a Bachelor of Science in those fields.
And what inspired you to launch your Conscious Consumer? And how did your personal journey land you there?
I was clinically dead from a burst brain aneurysm, and I had an out-of-body experience, what they would deem a clinical death experience, and I interfaced with what I believe is the consciousness that inhabits all of us, the human spirit, whatever you like to call it, the consciousness that I think connects us all and leads us to create art and Western civilization.
How do you define conscious consumption, and why is it more relevant today than any other time in history?
Well, we've seemed to have reached the point in human existence where there's a number of, shall we call them, oligarchs amongst us, starting with Malthus, who seems to be their philosopher of choice, who believes there's too many people on the planet and we have to use governments to enforce how much we consume. I believe that's a personal human choice we have to make, and because governments will use it to control us, and I don't think we can allow that.
No,
because we've seen where that leads. I mean, that thinking gave birth to the book Limits of Choice from the Club of Rome, and the first Earth Day, and these things where they started using government to control our consumption behaviors. but we have to do that ourselves.
You know, many people think consumer behavior and environmental activism are separate, and yet you argue they're deeply connected. Can you explain how?
Absolutely. Every choice you make, you vote for your dollars with, every product you consume, everything you do, it does have some effect on the planet. Not to the extent that they led you to believe, like if you want to go back to Al Gore and Malthusians before him who think that we have this huge effect on the planet, and we're going to lead to its demise. You had Greta Doomsburg, as I call her, several years ago, saying, "How dare you?"
Oh my gosh.
But there really hasn't been any scientific proof that they were, they called it global warming. Then they had to switch it to climate change, and because it's too warm, it's climate change, and you're bad, you're doing bad thing. Then if it's too cold, it's climate change. So they have that catch-all phrase. But that really just became a locus of using governments to control human behavior, and that's the control grid that I believe they're trying to use to put the lockdown on human behavior. Not for the good of the planet, but just that's a ruse to control people, I think.
Now, what are some of the major myths people hold about sustainable or ethical purchasing?
The myths are like, carbon dioxide was the thing that they were saying was going to cause global warming and end all life on Earth. But, carbon dioxide is plant food.
That's right. But if
you have a greenhouse, people buy carbon dioxide to, increase their plant yields.
Mm-hmm. On your website, you present tools or frameworks for consumers. Now, what's the first step someone should take to become a conscious consumer?
Just consider everything that you do and buy does have some affect. So try to do things that, are the best you can do. Like for example, I spent years as a raw food vegan as a choice. I just made me feel better. But, that has a very light footprint because, you're not buying food that has a lot of packaging. You're not throwing a lot of stuff away. It's just, and you're eating, things that aren't processed, not using a lot of machinery involved in the processing. It's just living food. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever makes you feel. Everybody's body's different. I'm not strictly raw vegan, but at times I go back to that, and I don't use it as a cudgel to hammer people or beat up on people about, you should do this.
Is in your opinion, is there a connection between the ADHD that we're seeing so prevalent in kids these days and the food that they eat that is loaded with chemicals that I never heard of when I was a kid? No one I know ever had an allergy towards peanuts.
Yeah. Well, the peanut allergy is one thing, but then processed foods largely contain MSG, which does become like a hyperstimulant in your brains and to some people, and seems to cause ADHD and peanuts is that became the George Washington Carver who hybridized nuts with legumes and like that. A lot of those allergies comes because you took some nuts that are supposed to grow up in trees, now you grow them in bushes on the ground, they get fungus in them. That's what they're allergic to, not the peanuts, the fungus.
How do you reconcile the fact that in modern economic consumption that it's built into everything from jobs, growth, infrastructure, yet you're advocating, Eric, for mindful reduction. Now, what is mindful reduction?
Not consuming beyond your needs, just trying to live in balance with the biosphere, because we do need a healthy environment to support, agriculture. But termites give off more carbon dioxide than any human activity.
Well, isn't that because there's more termites than there are humans?
Yeah, but it's not upsetting the balance of the planet. I come from a viewpoint, that the Earth is not overpopulated. There is enough for everyone to go around, but our behaviors do, in some cases cause unnecessary outputs of toxins and pollution. So we do have to watch ourselves. It's we can't be completely unconscious about how we live.
But if the Earth can sustain the population that we have now, how come there are people in countries where they're suffering from droughts? They can't farm. They depend on other countries and agencies to help them out. Where do we draw the line between these kind of people and the conditions that they're living in, and then look at the global population, industry, commerce. How do we formulate all this to justify the fact that, there are enough. The Earth can easily sustain the amount of people. We're not facing a population crisis. Are we facing a climate control crisis then?
Going back to my thought that there are certain oligarchs who subscribe to the Malthusian philosophy that, where they need to control populations. A lot of this climate stuff could be climate geoengineering.
Even the melting of the glaciers?
Well, that was thought to be a thing, but then we discovered that a lot of that was a psyop. I remember the time cover photo with the polar bear on the ice, the melting ice. That we found that not to be true. That the ice caps are actually. It looks like it's gonna. If anything, it's gonna get a lot colder soon. And one of the first things, I think back in the 70s, they were saying how we were going to have a coming ice age. And
right.
That was the big worry. Then when that didn't come, they were like, it's going to get too hot. The sea levels are going to rise. And I think where I live is supposed to be underwater by now. Yeah, we're supposed to be under like 12 feet of water, according to what they said, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I'm still here.
If it is a psyop, who's responsible for it?
I think it's this oligarchical control. I think it's people that think that they have the power and or the lust for power. I think they subscribe to possibly a Luciferian philosophy where they just don't want people around. They think that the earth is their playground and it should just be for them.
So how do we justify then the photos that are taken by reputable scientific organizations, as well as people like National Geographic, Greenpeace, with all the ice that is melting and the time-lapse photography that has been taken from science showing that the glaciers are in fact melting? Who do we believe?
Were those the ones from the early 2000s and 90s?
No, we're talking about recent ones.
Oh, I want to see those, because maybe I haven't been keeping up with that.
Okay.
Because we're about to get our coldest early snap here in Florida, and it's all our local meteorologists are like, "Wow, this is like an unheard of event for it to get this cold in Florida this early."
And do you think that this is part of PSYOP? Climate control?
What I'm seeing is I think a lot of it has been. Starting with the very first Earth Day until now, it was there. Like even Bill Gates kind of come off it last week.
Yeah.
He's like no longer a climate alarmist.
Stand by, Eric. You and I have to take our first break. Eric Haase is our guest, X-Zone Nation. ConsciousConsumer.net is his website, and we'll both be back on the other side discussing more here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on Talkstar, Mutual Broadcast Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, Tuber, and of course on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ here in St. Catharines, streaming classic1220.ca.
Welcome to the X-Zone, believe and be free, a sanctuary for truth that dare to be seen, where the line between... In a quiet town called Carricknan, near the river's gentle call, lived a woman with a light so pure, she gave her love to all. She walked the streets of Montreal with grace and steady hands, working for the salvage folk from far off London lands. My mother, my friend, a soul so kind, a guardian angel through space and time, with open arms and a heart so wide, she stood by me by every side. From Camley's
Welcome back, everyone. Eric Haase is our special guest. His website is ConsciousConsumer.net. Eric, what do you think is the most important global problem people should be focusing on today?
I think lately it's AI.
Give me your reasoning.
The reliance on I'm no Luddite. I've been making websites since the 90s, and so I keep on top of technology, but I have watched the way youth are being brought up on AA. First it was smartphones that have been dumbing them down. Now they're used to they cannot think on their feet, and they are looking at like AI as this god, like and depending on which AI you use, there's a 25% what they call hallucination rate, because the old phrase for most older computer programmers is garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
So these large language models are all built on whatever's fed to them. They all have biases, but they are being held up and used as the be-all, end-all to how people get and perceive, get their information, and then look at reality using it. And there's the few studies that have been done on it so far showing that these kids are like in a state of not trauma. They can't interact with people without their AI knowledge or the use of an AI. So and like I said, they have what they're calling hallucination rates of 25%, meaning they're wrong about 25% of the time. So I believe that they can cause these mass perception problems with reality. And I think they are the greatest danger to us right now.
Can you give me an example of what you consider to be one of the dangers that they provide?
Well, the way, for example, a company like Palantir uses their AI, they're starting to use it. I mean, there's been some stories that, Palantir is being used for targeting of the weapon systems in the Israel-Palestine war. And that's, you're taking humans out of even the equation of like pulling the trigger on people. They're using it for, identification, targeting, and in some case, weapons deployment.
But couldn't that same technology be used for good and for peace?
Yeah, so it really is about who controls it, but who do you trust to control these things? That, like, when I was a young musician, I read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. So I've been looking at this for a long time. And I didn't think I'd come to see it in my lifetime be deployed to where it is already. So if we reach the stage of what they're calling AGI, artificial generalized intelligence, where we have these systems making decisions on their own, if you start to read the works of a lot of these people, it gets, I don't want to be too black-pilled about it, because there's a lot of good that comes out of this, like Apple using the AI to live times translate different languages or give like hearing to deaf people. And so they're, I'm not a total Luddite about it. There's a lot of good that these things can be used for.
All right, then in your opinion, how can we best improve our global situation? Can't AI be part of that?
It seems like the cat's out of the bag and it ain't going back in. And like I said, I think it can be used for a lot of good, but in my latest novel, AI is used to create the villain in it. So I look at it as a creative. Like, I don't use any AI apps. I study them, but I'm staying far away from them, because I think the human creative spirit, I mean, they're already being used to write books, to make films. There's entire musical projects that are completely AI that fool people, including apps like Spotify.
Right.
Who, like, there's, I think you may have heard about the band that was completely AI. Yeah. That became top 10 a few months ago. Nobody realized there's no human involved in any of that music.
But what's wrong with that?
Well, it's, I think it takes away from, like, what about people that, spend their lives, like me, I spent the last 10 years writing this, 104,000 words in iambic pentameter in a 10-line rhyme scheme to create this, like Walt Whitman spent 10 years writing Leaves of Grass. I don't think AI can do that, and I think if we I just think it's a dangerous thing. I don't want to be too black-pilled about it, but I'm not using it. I am like making my stand, and like I'm never going to have an AI app on any of my computers, any of my devices, and I'm just not going there.
Not too long ago, Hollywood was screaming because AI was going to be used by different studios. And my comment was, so what? You know, if it can
people
see,
don't have jobs because
well,
of it.
you know what, then yeah, the way I look at it is the bottom line. If the studio saves money, the consumer saves money.
But they never lower the prices to the consumer. And you can, at this point, we can still tell. I mean, at least I can when I'm looking at something that's AI generated, and even reading anything from a book to like a business plan that I can tell, like, I just got a business plan from somebody who wanted me to get involved. I'm like, they used the AI to write this. So, writers, actors, all these people that are creatives are losing work, and I don't see costs of anything coming down. But I do see a lot of humanity and human spirit, like, not in that equation.
But why should the rest of the world suffer? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, it's very simple. We're talking about people who are losing their jobs to AI, but how many people are benefiting from that implementation of that AI program? You can lose the jobs as actors. You can lose the jobs as technicians. You can lose the job of even producing when it comes to music, videos, or films. I feel bad for those people who have spent their lives doing it, but when push comes to shove, we have to take a look at the total global effect on that. Are we going to just start shunning AI because it puts a few people out of a job? What happened when the ATMs came into service at the banks? Everybody thought that it was going to be the worst thing that ever happened. Big Brother was tracking you all the time. And silly people, they didn't realize that when they used their credit card at the gas station, or if they went across the border with their passport, they were being tracked. And once again, I came up with the phrase, well, you know what? If you're afraid of Big Brother, there's a problem. Because if you haven't done anything, there's nothing to fear. It's only when you have something to hide, then you have something to fear. So
that's the general phrase that they use, but like, look at when people had something to say, like, look what happened with the truckers in your country, when all they were doing was exercising their free speech, and the next thing you know, those who say, they changed the rules on, we decided this is doing something wrong, and we're gonna like crack down, we're gonna shut down your bank account, and they gave them the smackdown.
I have to tell you, I was in all favor for shutting them down.
Really?
Yeah. Because what they were trying to do made very little sense to me.
Really? In what respect? Because I only know, like, we got headlines about that in America.
If you break the law, there's consequences. They broke the law. There were consequences.
Were those pandemic laws at the time?
What do you mean by the pandemic?
Were the pandemic laws, or were the horn honking laws, or because that was all going on during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, what they did was they basically invaded a city. They were causing havoc and chaos. They were deliberately breaking laws. So, yes, the government, in my opinion, did the right thing. They shut them down. And any money that they were raising online with FundMe for their illegal activities was halted and seized. You just can't go around breaking the law and expect not to have any consequences.
Absolutely. I wish somebody would tell, like, a lot of our politicians down here in the United States that.
Well, you can't tell the politicians that when the president of the United States is one of the biggest criminals that are walking on this face of the earth. What is it? 54 felony convictions.
Yeah, but that was civil. I don't believe that woman for a second.
What about the Epstein files?
What about them? I want to see, what's going on there. We don't know.
There's he's a great master of diversion.
Yeah, but I don't know. The Epstein thing, that's a whole other can of worms. I think that's an Israeli, Mossad honeypot thing to control our politicians and the world's politicians, for that matter.
How do
I
you
think
figure
that's all
that?
wrapped up in the banking and war machine. And being a staunch anti-war person, and I don't know what's going on there, but I don't have a good feeling about any of that. But I think if they had anything on Trump about that, they would have played that card in 2016.
I don't think they've played that card yet because Trump is a very powerful man and he can make a lot of things happen. He's using the force of the military against his own citizens. I don't give that man 1 ounce of credibility whatsoever.
I don't know. I think speaking of law and order, we have millions of illegals here, and I don't have a problem with him deploying National Guard to get them out.
But
I mean,
how can they be illegals when the president of the United States before him allowed them in?
Yeah, he didn't allow them. He opened our borders, and our federal government has very little powers under our original Constitution. One of them is to enforce the borders. And so Biden just openly broke those laws and allowed us to be invaded. And that's a slap in the face to every legal immigrant, which is my ancestors, and all the ones who came in the right way. We just saying, come in through the front door, let us see who you are. And we don't have a problem with migration in this country.
Sure.
We have a problem with illegal migration. They always leave that out when they talk about it.
We've got to take another break coming up. But when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about your thoughts on the U.S. government shutdown.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, stand by. Eric Haase is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. ConsumerConnection.net is ConsciousConsumer.net. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And don't forget, always listen to us Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, Tuber.com, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and of course, your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM here in St. Catharines, streaming us on classic1220.ca.
With grace and steady hands, working for the salvage folk from far off London lands. My mother, my friend, a soul so kind, a guardian angel through space and time. With open arms and a heart so wide, she stood by me, by every side. From Camley's lanes to heaven's hall, she was a guardian angel to all. Raised in old Camley. In the late night hours when the world's asleep, Rob McConnell's voice echoes secrets to keep. From Roswell's whispers to tales of the sky, on the X-Zone radio we learn to fly high. With every new guest the story unfolds, from abductees' tales to the mysteries told. Government cover-ups, they're deep and they're wide, but we're on a quest with the truth as our guide. Oh, journey through the X-Zone, the cosmos we roam, searching for answers beyond our earthly home. Are we alone in the dark, or watching from afar? In the heart of the night, we're reaching for stars.
Eric Haase is my special guest, X-Zone Nation. ConsciousConsumer.net is the website. Eric, just getting back to what we were talking about, the trucker situation up here, during the pandemic or post-pandemic. What is your opinion on what really happened with COVID?
I don't think we were given the truth on any of that.
Why do you think that?
Because I did some pretty basic research when I also have a background in, like I said, my psychology background. I also did studies in in film and propaganda and its earliest uses of propaganda and how effective propaganda is on people, like, and how you can be brainwashed within a very short space of time. And so the way that was all unfolding with every news station and every outlet giving you the same story, I'm like, this don't happen like this. And, bat to human, and none of it added up to me. And then I just did the one thing you do when I was a journalist working for newspapers, follow the money. And I found that traced that money that went to the University of Carolina, like when we were not supposed to do any gain of function, and they outsourced that to the lab in Wuhan where the outbreak began. So the whole thing with the bat, that's not how those viruses spread. Like that took too quick of a jump, too fast. What made more sense is that this money went there to this specific place, probably that lab leak, and they were also turning on 5G in that city at the same time. I don't know. It's all so fishy, but I just know propaganda when I hear it. So,
but how can we say that the deaths that were recorded and verified were part of a propaganda scheme?
Well, in the deaths in China or
here in Canada, the United States, right around the world, people were dying from COVID. So how can we say that it was just a propaganda thing?
There weren't any more death. When you look at the overall death rate from that year, there was no more people died than normally die from the seasonal flu. In fact, the numbers were a little lower than the normal death rate we have from flu. And a lot of that was probably because you had people like doing the opposite of what's healthy for them. Instead of getting out, getting sunshine, getting proper nutrition, you had them put under a tremendous amount of stress with more ongoing propaganda about covering your face, which is unhealthy for you, be rebreathing your own air. So a lot of people got sick from the overall campaign of fear being pushed on them, which again, propaganda is deadly. And they listened to all that, but the death rate actually went down if you look at previous years of flu, because flu is a pretty serious thing.
It's pretty serious, but it was
COVID, and there was no, like, COVID cured the flu. We had no flu deaths that year. They were all just marked COVID.
I saw the statistics. I saw the numbers, and I disagree with you on your outlook on that it was just propaganda, because one of the people who died was my mother.
I'm sorry to hear that. I lost my next door neighbor.
Yeah. Let's get back to talking about the government shutdown.
Okay.
What in the world is happening? I believe today turned it into the longest time the government's been shut down. You've got the Democrats saying, hey, we just want to make sure that the people who need health care can still afford it. You've got the Republicans saying, well, we'll talk about it after we get back into Washington. And then you've got your president saying nothing about it. I guess he's too busy building this, is it a ballroom, to take care of his people.
I say keep it shut down. Because what they're trying to save healthcare-wise is the Unaffordable Care Act. And, that's Obama's legacy. They don't want to let go of that. And a lot of that money is a giant slush fund. It's like unaffordable healthcare that, was illegally passed through the Supreme Court. I think that goes back to Epstein, too. I think, our Chief Justice is compromised.
Have you always been a conspiracy theorist?
I became a lot more of one after I was dead.
Tell us about that.
Well, after my clinical death, and I became aware that there is a consciousness that knows you and I, all of us, better than we know ourselves. Nobody's getting away with anything here. We're all going to be, shall we say, judged.
Sure. What was your clinical death caused by?
I had a burst brain aneurysm, like these behind me. Those are my scans from. Right. They took those pictures before they went in and did the craniotomy. I had a rupture of back in my occipital, so I was never expected to live. Never mind be able to take care of myself again.
How old were you when this happened?
This was 10 years ago, so 27 years old.
My goodness. How are you doing?
I have to take one pill a day because I'm epileptic, but if I take this pill that they don't even know how it works, I'm fine. I don't have any episodes, and I have no peripheral vision. So that makes my days a bit tricky, and I have a pain condition on my outer left side that feels like frostbite. But it's better than being how I was when I woke up in the ICU, connected to machines, keeping me breathing, keeping me alive, paralyzed, unable to communicate with the world. I was called locked-in syndrome, where I was aware, but I couldn't let anybody around me know that I was.
Unreal.
So that was an absolute nightmare, and I eventually just fought my way out of it, and I chronicled that in my book Unawares and novelized the experience so I could do what I feel I was put back here to do, because I did not want to come back here. I was going into, as they say, the light. I was out of here, and I tried to get my girlfriend to not take me to the hospital, but women don't listen to me. I don't know about you, but they don't listen to me.
How long was your experience of being dead? How long were you clinically dead?
To me, it felt like infinite time, but only a few minutes of, this is where the brain death thing gets very tricky. Like they could have called, they got my father they found my cell phone and my things, and because they had to get permission to operate on me, because they didn't think that I was going to have any life that would be worth living. And my dad said, no, operate. I want you to try to save his life. And I was aware of all this happening, although I was completely anesthetized, dead to the world. I'm screaming to the universe that I was out floating around, and no, say no, Dad.
Yeah. So where does the conspiracy theorist in you come from then? I'm trying to understand, here you've got a team of medical experts who save your life. You don't want to come back. You wake up in the ICU. You're attached to all these machines that are keeping you alive. So where's the conspiracy in this?
Well, before I first became, I guess, what you would call a conspiracy theory, from the original thing that coined the term conspiracy theorist, long before I was ever a gleam of my father's eye, the Kennedy assassination happened, which was where we get the term conspiracy theorist from, because anybody who disagreed with the narrative, that Oswald with, a couple shots, put several wounds in two people and took out our president. That bothered me from the time I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I just started, studying all that stuff and driving everybody around me crazy with it. So early in life, I learned that, government and media will lie to you, and that the most dangerous thing on the world is giving your power away to people, because power, I think, is the ultimate, it's not money that is the root of all evil. It's power, because power gives you access to money and all these other things. And then we get into transhumanism and all the other crazy things that are going on in the world.
So tell me about your thoughts on the shutdown.
The shutdown, I'm like, let it go on longer, because I think we need to get our permanent bureaucracy out and get our country back to the original constitution of a small, limited constitutional republic, with all these people in permanent bureaucracy getting rich off taxpayers' money, while they're really experts in nothing except kind of being power psychopaths. A lot of these people never had real jobs. They spend their entire careers. Pelosi, I think, just left yesterday. How many, 50-something years? It's longer than I was been alive.
I was shocked to see that your president is now selling certified, authenticated pieces of the East Wing that have come from the demolition of it for his ballroom. Is there anything, in your opinion, that man will not sell?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a new one on me. But he's doing a lot of things I think are good. But there's a lot of things that he's doing I think are far worse than that. That go right back to the technocracy and AI control over things. And I think there's a lot that he's doing that I do trust. But you can't, once anybody's in power, that's the true test. Like, you got to see what they do when they'll have power.
Yeah, well, we saw what he did in Trump 101, and yet he was still voted in again for a second term.
Yeah, I voted for him both times because every time we've had other leadership in this country, like
Hmm.
as a thrice physically disabled person, every time the other team, which I believe there's just two, Democrat, Republican, two wings of the same bird, I've done worse under like the Democrat presidents we've had. Like I was working until the scamdemic, and then Biden, and then all these businesses I was working for are gone. And then when under Obama, I was running my own small business, and
Hmm.
every time I had a year where I was doing good, I was paying so much in taxes. I'm like, why am I busting my ass? He's
Yeah.
gonna take all my money and then tell me he built that. So
Good.
I don't like any of it. I don't like any of them. I am a small government libertarian, if you want to put any label on me, but I don't like labels. We have to be free thinking, free sharing individuals that all are looking out for each other.
Hallelujah. Well said. You and I have to take another break here. In fact, it's our final break for tonight's show. Exonation, our guest this hour is Eric Haase, and you can find out all about Eric on his website, consciousconsumer.net.
Right.
The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here from our Broadcast Center studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. We'll be back on the other side very shortly, so whatever you do, don't go away. And if you do go away, make sure you make it back before we get back on air. Don't go away.
In the late night hours when the world's asleep, Rob McConnell's voice echoes secrets to keep. From Roswell's whispers to tales of the sky, on the X Zone radio, we learn to fly high. With every new guest, the story unfolds, from abductees' tales to the mysteries told. Government cover-ups, they're deep and they're wide, but we're on a quest with the truth as our guide. Oh, journey through the X-Zone, the cosmos we roam. The sun broke through like a whispering sigh, painted gold on the tears in your eye. The clock ticked loud.
Eric Haase is our special guest this hour, Exxon Nation. His website is consciousconsumer.net. Um, in your opinion, what would it take to get the United States back to where it should be?
I think going back to the original pre 1870, we had a thing called the Organic Act here in 1879, which kind of took us away from our original Constitution. So I think we got to get more towards that. Smaller government, working for we the people, more
Mm-hmm.
isolationist, not getting involved and being the world's police force, pre, World War One sized government.
Pre-World War One government, what was the population back then compared to what it is now? Isn't that part of the equation?
Well, by pre-World War One, I mean like that was the Woodrow Wilson's I'll keep you out of the war, and then we lost millions of people. I think that was the beginning of us being the world's police force. Woodrow Wilson wanted to start the League of Nations. We defied that just barely, but then after World War II, which I think was also engineered, we wound up with the UN, which I think is a huge mess. And I think we got to get out of all this global police forcing and take care of our business here at home.
I
Because we have a
agree.
lot of problems here.
Yeah, I agree with that. In your opinion, what's more dangerous, nuclear war or AI?
AI, because I think AI could start a nuclear war on its own as we continue to advance towards what's called AGI,
Mm-hmm.
artificial general intelligence, where it begins to think on its own and do on its own. But there's just piles of books on that and theories on that. And I don't want to get too black pilled on it because it does it'll keep you up at night if you let it.
If you let it, that's the key phrase.
But that's why I try to keep a light heart about things, hence being dressed like a jester and writing novels and being a
Mhm.
poet and just trying to keep, people like, we got to be connected to each other and keep the human spirit alive, or I think the machine will take over. It's
Uh,
not a new thing. It goes back to H.G. Wells' earliest works.
so tell me, as you keep your fingers on the pulse of the nation, do you think that the United States should be involved militarily in the Ukraine and Israeli conflicts?
No, not at all. I think those are manufactured wars.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, they're proxy wars for the United States as well as Russia.
Yeah, and Europe.
Yeah.
And NATO. I think NATO needs to be over. I think its mission was accomplished when the Berlin Wall came down.
So, what is your opinion on the interstellar object that's coming to Earth? And there's a lot of people in the scientific community, like Ari Loeb, who really think that this is a spaceship. What are your thoughts on it?
Him in particular, I don't believe him, and I don't believe much of what comes out of NASA. But it is interesting, it's one of those things where what are we looking at here? Is this AI produced stuff? Like most NASA footage has been shown to be artist renderings of things, not actual things. So I think that it could be another giant psyop, or maybe we are looking at what could be the biggest news story of all time. When I was a kid, I saw UFOs several times. In mass sightings, not just by myself. So I've seen things I can't explain.
Why do you think that the government is hiding the fact that yes, we have been visited, yes, they are amongst us, and yes, we have traded humans for technology?
I think so. There's a lot of, Eisenhower supposedly had meetings with creatures after the Roswell incident, and there was supposedly treaties formed. And if you look at like Phil Schneider, what he said about there being in Arizona, and there's just so much lore to get into there. But then there's always also what the French researcher thought, that these are not interstellar creatures or aliens. These are interdimensional beings, perhaps angels, demons, and the like. And that's what I write stories about. That's what this book is actually, a book of angel lore and the confusion between angels, aliens, and all interdimensional creatures. So we don't know, but these mysteries are fascinating. I think it's part of what makes life's great pageant, and wonderful to research and be alive.
It certainly is. These are great times, no doubt about it. But what happens to our next generation? What will they be facing?
That's what I worry about with AI. Like, I see a lot of these kids that, they can't communicate, and then, psychoactive drugs that a lot of them are on, and I just feel for them. And that's a lot of, this book is actually a young adult novel. It's a little bit more advanced, maybe more like a new adult novel. It's not written like Harry Potter, but it's for young people to give them some hope and something to hopefully inspire them.
In your opinion, how close are we to the prospect of a nuclear war?
I think that we are very close. I think that's like the scare event that this is all moving towards, between what's going on in Ukraine and what I call the Hatsteins and McCoybergs, which is what I call when people in Israel are fighting the Palestinians, because these are all like familiar relationships in the Middle East. Palestinians, Israelis. If you read the Bible at all, these are all people they're basically cousins in a family feud. And if I don't laugh about it, I'll cry with the amount of bloodshed that goes on there.
Yeah, that's true.
Between the Hatsteins and the McCoybergs.
The Trump administration has made serious changes in every cabinet post that he's responsible for. How do you see the change from the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of War?
That's one that, because this is an anti-war novel. One of the first things that I said when I woke up from being dead was, I declare war on war. I am a staunch anti-war, and also just as much a complete First Amendment free speech person. A lot of people speak freely you won't be able to find who's the real jerks amongst you. So people should be allowed to say whatever they want to say, because that's how you find out who the jerks are. But yeah, the Secretary of War thing, I don't know, because I'm very anti-war. But then again, if we're going to get dragged into these global, endless wars, fight to win. I'd rather not fight at all, though. But there, then there's, times when evil needs to be met with force.
I agree, but you don't. Why look for trouble? For example, the alleged speedboats that the president is targeting in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Using the U.S. military outside of its jurisdiction in international waters without going through Congress, making war plans to go to Venezuela, and he's going way out of control, and yet nobody's stopping him. Why?
Yeah, well, actually, I spent a lot of time living in Miami, and so I know everybody in Miami who knows anything knows that those boats that he's blowing out of the water, those go-fast boats are for one thing only. So I'm not one, if they're running, when they're running speed into the United States, that's bad enough. But a lot of these things are killing hundreds of thousands of people. The fentanyl that's coming from China being put together in Mexico, I don't have a problem with that, actually. Because
so you don't have you don't have a
pleasure craft.
You don't have a problem with him breaking the law.
No, it's not breaking the law. Those are drug running boats.
They may be drug running boats, but he has no jurisdiction in international waters without going into Congress.
But I think he's saving more lives.
But that doesn't give him the right to go against the Constitution.
I don't know. When you're commander-in-chief, you do have certain powers, and who's going to give him trouble about that other than Venezuela, who's making huge profits running these things? And Venezuela's another one of those places where those people are under a dictatorship. They're the oil richest nation perhaps in the world, but again, you get people in power who aren't going to work for the people. Those people could, and were up until the time where leadership changed there, we're living on a high hog.
So what's the difference?
And then one leadership change, and
so what's the difference between the dictator in Venezuela and the president of the United States? Then
I don't see him as a dictator.
You don't?
No.
And you're a conspiracy theorist?
I see, any president, you got to keep your eye on them. You got to always keep power in check. But
nobody is keeping him in check.
But I don't see that he's operating outside the jurisdiction of his powers as commander in chief.
But the powers of
the United States protected.
Yeah.
We've lost more people to fentanyl than we did in Vietnam.
And you have to ask yourself why.
By 6 times over.
But you have to ask yourself why. What is going on in the United States that is causing all these people to take the fentanyl in the first place?
Lack of hope.
And who causes that?
I think it's just this peculiar place that we're at in society right now, where I think it's because it's not only our leadership. I think we're in the midst of a global revolution.
But isn't it funny that the fentanyl crisis started during Trump 101?
Oh no, fentanyl crisis has been going on, and even before that, before fentanyl crisis, you had the pharmaceutical opiate that I have a friend whose son has got messed up on that, and he's been a mess since the 90s.
I just don't see anyone having the authority to deliberately break the law and to use the emergency powers to justify their thirst for power. I think
all governments.
I think he's a very evil man, and I will be one of the happiest people in the world when he is dethroned.
I don't think he's one of the most evil, but
well, his hero was Hitler.
No.
Yes, yes. Do you realize that as a child he read Mein Kampf and he kept a copy of Mein Kampf beside his bed? If you take a look at how Hitler was running his administration, Trump is running his administration just like Hitler. Charlie Kirk, for example, was in my opinion responsible for the youth squad that Hitler had as well. It's crazy. The similarities are there, and like I said, I think that it's time that the United States really took a good look at it, at why it's doing what it's doing, and they need to see what Trump is doing to the rest of the world, because one of these days it's not going to be Trump against the world, it's going to be the world against Trump. And what at one time were enemies to other parts of the world are going to be allies. And if need be, I think the world is going to take Trump down.
That remains to be seen, but, I'm hoping it's the other way around and that we all get united. And because like I said, I don't see a problem with taking out Go Fast boats.
All right, listen, you and I have to say so long for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And X Zone Nation, I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we visit the world of the unknown. And when it comes to politics, there's more unknown in politics than there is anywhere else. I get ticked off because whatever Trump is doing in the United States, my country, my fellow citizens are suffering for his greed. I'll be back tomorrow night. Take care of yourself, and always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.